What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. I'm your host Mike, and today I'm going to break down my top 5 favorite players to add for this coming week. Now, some of these players could have very favorable schedules, heavy schedules, or be a beneficiary of a player that's out on COVID protocol or injury. Remember guys, leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't, and make sure you take a second to listen to our video sponsor. Introducing the new sponsor to our channel, we're talking about a brand new daily fantasy props app, Thrive Fantasy. Use code FP100 and receive a 100% deposit match up to $100 and 2 free $20 contest tickets. That's code FP100, receive a 100% deposit match and 2 free contests. The first must-have player for this week is defenseman Justin Schultz of the Washington Capitals. Now, it's important to note that Schultz is strictly an ad this week because John Carlson's out on COVID protocol. With no real timetable for Carlson's return, it could be sometime this week. The last I checked, it was 6 days ago he was placed on COVID protocol. So if he does return, Schultz's value will basically drop to 0 and he's worth a drop. But for the time being, Carlson is out, so that means Schultz is the #1 defenseman on the back end and the #1 power play quarterback. This is super important to note because this is where he's going to rack up all of his points. He's played at least 22 minutes in all 5 of his last 5 games. Schultz is currently the leader amongst defensemen on the Capitals over the last 5 games with power play minutes with 13 minutes and 30 seconds. The Capitals do have a pretty average schedule this coming week with 3 games, 2 at home against Vegas and San Jose, and then a road game against the Stars. Now, these aren't particularly favorable matchups, but they are decent matchups where the Capitals could see some offensive upside. If Carlson does return this week, drop Schultz, but for the time being, he's definitely worth an add. Moving on, the next must-add player is Kailer Yamamoto of the Edmonton Oilers. Now, it really surprised me to see that he's down at 5% ownership. I remember he was drafted in almost all leagues. We recommended him as a drop early in the season due to his lack of shot volume and play time. But now he's on the top line with McDavid and the top power play unit. With Ryan Nugent-Hopkins out right now and no timetable for return, it looks like Yamamoto is getting a lot more minutes and a lot more opportunity. He's not really the best player on this list, but playing with McDavid 5-on-5 and 5-on-4, he deserves to be added because he literally just has to stand there and get a pass from McDavid in front of the net. He'll probably never repeat his 26 points in 27 games 2 years ago, but he is still just 23 years old. He's played 18 minutes in 4 of his last 5 games since changing lines, including a decent amount of time on the top power play unit. The Oilers do have a solid schedule this week, 3 games against Vancouver, Nashville, and Montreal. Vancouver and Montreal are super favorable matchups and a really good power play spots, which is where we should see Yamamoto thrive the most. Sticking with the Edmonton Oilers, the next must-add player is Evan Bouchard. Evan Bouchard, I recommended to pick up earlier in the season. It's been a pretty tough hold. I've actually held him in both of my leagues, but now with Tyson Barrie out, it looks like Bouchard is the power play 1 defenseman, and in the last game, he played over 24 minutes and cashed in with 2 goals. To my surprise, Bouchard still has 38% ownership, meaning he'll only be available in about 10 to 12 team leagues. I think in 14 team leagues, it's pretty unlikely he's available. But as mentioned, the Yamamoto bit, the Edmonton schedule this week is decent with Vancouver, Nashville, and Montreal. Good power play spots, good 5-on-5 spots. I think Bouchard's going to have a really solid week and could be an add moving forward depending on when Tyson Barrie returns to the lineup. The next must-add player for this week is Tage Thompson of the Buffalo Sabres. I'm really surprised that I'm at the point where I'm recommending Buffalo players, but Tage Thompson has been super fantasy relevant. He's a 6'7" forward and probably one of the best players on the Sabres team. 14 goals and 28 points in 38 games is really nothing you should shy away from. 119 shots as well, blew past his career high. The Sabres have been crushed with injuries and they have a really good schedule coming up. They face off against Arizona and the Senators, probably the 2 best matchups in the league, and then they end the week against the Avalanche, which is where you'll probably not want to start him. He is playing on line 1 and power play 1, and he's producing at career high rates in goals, assists, and shots. He's a worthwhile pickup in 10 to 12 team leagues. The point upside is there. For a 6'7" forward, he actually doesn't hit as much as I thought he would, but you're going to get some good shots, good points, and potentially some power play points. The final must-add player who should be available in some of the deeper leagues is Mikael Backlund of the Calgary Flames. A pretty slow season for him with just 12 points in 36 games while playing over 17 minutes per night. They were hiding him on the 3rd line with Lucic for quite a while in the season, but he's finally now in the 2nd line with Mangiapane and Coleman, who are legitimate top 6 players. He is getting power play 2 time, which, I mean, it doesn't really benefit him too much, but he still is getting the opportunity on the man advantage. He has multiple 20-goal seasons in his career, including 4 40-point seasons, and he's definitely someone that's worth an ad given the line mates and the opportunity moving forward. Calgary has a 4-game schedule this week with a moderate difficulty. 2 games against the Blues, those are pretty difficult matchups. 1 game against Columbus, which is favorable. And then they end the week against the Canucks, which we know is a good power play and 5-on-5 spot. I like Backlund moving forward. I like him for this week. And in 12 to 14 team leagues, he hopefully should be available at just 10% ownership. Moving on to the best and worst schedules for this coming week. Now, it's important to note that there are multiple teams with 4 games this coming week, but I just wanted to hone in on 3 teams. Pittsburgh faces off against Arizona, Seattle, Detroit, and LA, all very good matchups. The Rangers play LA, Columbus, Minnesota, and Seattle. Same thing, all favorable matchups. And Carolina with Vegas, Ottawa, New Jersey, and San Jose. We know Vegas is going to be quite a hard matchup, but the other 3 are super favorable. Some streamers for these teams could be John Marino for the Pittsburgh Penguins, Ryan Lindgren for the New York Rangers, and Brett Pesce for the Carolina Hurricanes. Finally, guys, the worst schedule for this coming week, there's 3 teams with just 2 games. Tampa Bay faces off against New Jersey and Vegas. The Leafs face off against Anaheim and Detroit. And finally, Nashville plays against Seattle and Edmonton. If you own any of these players or you're streaming some of them, you can look to drop them for this week and add players with some bigger schedules like we mentioned in the last bit. Remember, if you're streaming some players on these teams and they've actually been pretty good for you, just because they have a bad schedule this week doesn't mean they have a bad one next week or the week after, so it could be worthwhile to hold. If you have any questions with players to drop or pick up, let me know in the comments below and I'll make sure to answer as soon as I can. That'll do it for our Week 15 must-add players video. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.